Hello, welcome back to another video. I hope you're well. Today I'm going through all the books I read in April. I'm aware this is really delayed. Everything's been busy and I've just been meaning to get around to it, and I have 9 books to go through with you, I think. So I'll just jump straight in. My spatula is back, microphone on a spatula, and we are going to together talk through all the books I read. So starting off with a DNF, I'm just going to get that out of the way. I put this in one of my previous videos and on my Instagram of books I wanted to read before 2024, didn't make that, and then in 2024 I attempted it on my 3rd go, which I think is a telltale sign in itself. I DNF'd. Spilt Milk by Amy Beashel. This just the second person narrative unnerved me, and the fact it was about basically a woman regretting having her child. Now I'm currently reading a book about a woman who basically regrets having her child. But I just think, why did I not DNF this sooner? I was not enjoying it. It made me feel super, 1, uncomfortable, but 2, just really unhappy and miserable. And just the writing style just really put me off, and I was getting through it very slowly. I just did not look forward to picking it up, so I DNF'd that, which then made room for another good 9 books in April. I do have my notes just because I did read quite a few books, and some of them were library things or on my Kindle, so I don't have physical forms. But the first one I read was Britney Spears' memoir. Now I just needed something easy to read, basically brain fluff. You've probably seen it everywhere, and I'm not going to go draw upon it too much, but it basically details all of her life, romance, how she got to be a pop star, and then this, I can't remember the word, but basically her dad had control of everything she was earning basically, and whatever she was doing, even birth control. So yeah, really eye-opening, but again, just the brain fluff I needed to get me back into the reading headspace, because I think you need that sometimes. So there's that one. It was an easy read, all good. Now this next one, my boyfriend's friend's mum in fact wrote this, and it is The Devil You Know by Dr. Gwen Adshead. Now I bought this, I want to say it was either 1 or 2 years ago, when it was the Waterstones non-fiction pick of the month, and I am not a non-fiction girly, but this, wow, I'm actually sticking to my thing that I now want to read more non-fiction books. I'm currently on my 2nd or 3rd of the year. This was just stunning. It draws upon, so she is basically well known in her craft. I think it's psychology, psychotherapy, along those lines. She's the best at what she does. She has years of experience, and it deals upon her when she was working mainly in Broadmoor and dealing with very vulnerable inmates. I'm going to go this way, but yeah, she's one of Britain's leading psychiatrists, and she basically deals, I think it's 13 different inmates or people that she's dealt with in the past, and details their stories, and it just shows you that we are all deeply human, even if they've done these tragic things, where that be murder, stalking, or just serious psychotic episodes that have led them to do things. This is just so profound in what she covers, how sensitive you have to be in a job like this, and have a thick skin as well to just get through the day, and just some callous people you deal with as well. But ultimately this was very eye-opening. It shows you what it really means to be human, and on the other end of the spectrum, where there is unjust in the world and there are terrible people that do terrible things. And this, wow, I raced through this, and it is not it's an average sized book, but it's tiny font. It's by Faber as well, and I find they have really eye-opening books as a publisher. And this, wow, at times I was I couldn't believe this was based on people's real lives, and I just loved it. It was one of the best books I've read in a long time, especially non-fiction, which is a big surprise, but I would recommend this. It is quite an easy read, even though at times it can be a bit squeamish and quite uncomfortable. The whole pacing of it, the details are just compelling, utterly amazing. On to my next one. Not gonna lie, this is one that is quite forgettable. It is Maame. I'll put a picture here, and I don't really know what to say about this. It follows Maddie, lives in London. Her dad has, I think, I feel quite bad for not remembering, but I just didn't relate to this book that much because the storyline wasn't that grabbing. It was well told of how Maddie herself is dealing with mental illness, but also her dad is very ill. She's got her mum living back in Africa, and then she comes back. And her brother basically isn't too helpful too, so it's just Maddie, and she's also dealing with romance too. There's this guy she kind of falls in love with. Turns out he's a dick, and then she's trying to find love elsewhere, but also dealing with a lot of grievances at work. And yeah, it just wasn't very uplifting, shall we say. I thought it was a good book. It was well written, it was a good storyline, but it just didn't grab me enough, and that's okay. These books are there. I'm glad I read it, but it's been sat on my Kindle for a while, and yeah, it's just the fact I'm here a month and a bit later after reading it and it wasn't that memorable. It's not one that will stick with me. On to the next one. This is a crime thriller novel, and again, similar to Britney Spears, I just needed something that I just knew would keep me on a good reading streak and get me out of a flump, if that's a word for reading in this way. It is The Housemaid's Secret by Freida McFadden. Now, I read the first book when I was in, is it Rhodes, I think, last year in October. How that has flown by. You're not going to be let down by a Freida McFadden novel. I've got another one hidden in here and another on my Kindle as well. And this was just really compelling. I can't explain, just, you can also even... I'm all over the place. Even though this is part of a sequel or trilogy, as I think the third book is coming out literally next month, you can read this standalone. So it follows, what was her name again? Millie. She's a housemaid. She's working in New York. And after the escapades of the first novel, I was ready for something just as compelling. And yes, this was very easy reading. I'm also going to give this to my grandma because I know she'll just love this. Follows Millie. You'd think she learned her lesson from the first book. Maybe not. She's got in a kerfuffle again with this new couple where the woman, she has these mysterious cuts, bruises all over her, and Millie suspects it's her husband. In true McFadden style, not everything is as it seems, and we're taken through twists and turns. Of course, some of it is not believable, but it's just the true writing style, the pacing, short chapters. I just really enjoyed this, really loved it. And just remember, not everything is as it seems, and she will give you a sucker punch that you need. If you've followed my channel or my blog for a while, you will know I'm a massive fan of Elizabeth Day, and I'm surprised it's taken me this long to actually read her latest book. It is Friendaholic by Elizabeth Day, Confessions of a Friendship Addict. This is one book I kind of knew I needed to read, I just didn't know when. It is quite a dense book, but again, because of her writing style, which I truly love. She wrote Magpie, Paradise City, and The Party, which I loved as well. And this is a non-fiction book based on Elizabeth Day's own experience with navigating friendship and how she is basically, you could say, the people pleaser equivalent of friendship. But basically she's addicted, and like in her 40 plus years, she's learned like it's okay to give some friendships a break, and not all of them are meant to happen. Everything from ghosting through to trying to make them work, or like gaslighting you in other ways, and just realizing not everything has to work, especially as a result of COVID. That's how this book came about. And yeah, I just found it really enjoyable. Like, not my favorite book she's written, I love her books anyway, and this is a non-fiction one again. It was really enjoyable. And if you're just stuck with navigating friendships, or I don't know, maybe not even that, I think you can just read this. And if you're quite an introvert like me and you don't have a mass of friends, you can probably relate to this too. So either way, it's okay to let some friendships go, and then others, they do just happen, they work. And even if you see each other, like me and my best friend, we don't see each other for months on end. Sometimes we come together and it's like no time has passed at all. So those kinds of things, really enjoyable. And yeah, I'd recommend this. It's relatable to everyone. Next one was a Kindle read, and this I just purely read because one, I think I had it on my shelf, not realizing I also had it on my Kindle, and I wanted to read it and get rid of it. I'm talking about The Mother-in-Law by Sally Hepworth. I didn't know what kind of book this would be. I thought it was going to be like a really dark crime novel. It's not. It's basically kind of slow crime thriller, real slow burner, set in Australia. This family, honestly, when I think back to this book, I think like, why did I stick with it? I was so close to DNFing it, but it was just one thing. I was like, I've made it this far, I'm going to keep reading, because I was somehow compelled by the storyline, and it was okay writing, but I just felt there wasn't enough character development. So it follows this family, they're rich parents, and there's this other woman who's joined the family. I honestly can't remember her name, Lucy maybe. Her husband is the son of the rich couple, and there is also his sister, honestly can't remember her name, but they are just navigating everything. Basically tragedy strikes, mother dies, and it happens quite early on in the book. It's basically just dealing on Lucy's mother-in-law, and she's died, but then it becomes a whodunit. And then we learn a lot of things along the way about the family, maybe their motives, but yeah, just not enough character development for me. I am probably not in a rush to read any more of her books, but it was okay. I don't really have a lot more to say about that one, so on to the next. We are really racing through these now. This next one I read on my recent trip to Lisbon. I read this and my next book, which I'll show you as well. This one has been sat on my shelf down here for ages, and it is How Do You Like Me Now by Holly Bourne. I really enjoyed her first book, Pretending, and I listened to her, I think it was on Hattie Crisell's podcast In Writing a few years ago, and she just sounds like just such a nice woman, and the way she talks about her writing process and her books and her storylines, where it mainly deals on women's fiction, kind of the psychological aspect, and then relationships in a way as well, but they've obviously gone through something traumatic, or in this case, going through something traumatic. We meet Tori Bailey. She's kind of an influencer, you could say. She's successful because of her latest memoir, which resonated with a lot of women, and it's basically a fingers up to the typical convention of women, and she herself is probably telling the wrong side of the story, where she's actually stuck and she doesn't realise it in a real conventional but unhappy relationship. I found her writing just so easy to read. The storyline was great. And Tori, you can see she is like really anxiety ridden, a lot of thoughts in her head, which I can totally relate to. But she's stuck with this very narcissistic boyfriend called Tom, where he just seems really moody. He won't have sex with her, even though she tries, and then he's gaslighting her, all this kind of stuff. And Tori, she's stuck in like she wants more, but then she's too scared to leave. And as per like the quote on the front, I haven't been this obsessed with a book in years. I was obsessed throughout my time in Lisbon. Like when I did everything during the day, I just wanted to get back and read this, and I read this too quickly. So then I was able to read my other book. This is just really enjoyable women's fiction about this really flawed, confused character and whether she will take the leap and go out on her own, as well as all these other things going on as well. You can see she's kind of like messed in her own thoughts in the nicest way, because all her friends are having babies, her family members, there is expectation. She's really unhappy, but she doesn't really exude that, and she just tries to make do with what's happening to her. But there's also, as a woman, a body clock, a time clock, and you don't know what you want, like whether you want babies, whether you want to get married. And she proposes these things to Tom, and he's not very helpful. So yeah, I was reading this, I was like, he is a dick, just leave him. And she just doesn't, and you just hope and hope and hope. And I just like was still rooting for her, even though she was just really conflicted along the whole way. So yeah, and there for Tori, I was just really obsessed with this, really enjoyed it. Which leads me on to my next book, which I mentioned is The Maid by Nita. Prose, I'm not too sure, I think it's Nita. I've given it to my boyfriend's mum so she can read it, because it is just a really enjoyable and unexpected, borderline, a lot of adjectives there, cozy crime thriller. Now I am not into cozy crime at all. I've tried a few and I've been like, this is quite like sickening, I do not like it, because it is just so cheesy. Main character Molly, she works as a cleaner in a hotel. She lived with her grandma, but she sadly passed away, so it's just her on her own. But she is very eloquent, she's very good with her words, and she is a very, very hard worker. But let's just say her kindness is taken for granted, and she kind of ends up as a suspect in a murder. I really enjoyed this. It was very witty. The writing was just really compelling. So Molly is friends with Giselle, who is married to the murdered Mr. Black. And from there she buddies up, and then she tries to help Giselle out and other people as well, like there's Rodney, there's Mr. Snow, the hotel manager, all these kinds of people who know that she is an odd soul, but they try to keep her where they can. However, it seems her innocence gets the better of her. Like I said, she becomes a culprit in a murder case. So just kind of those things as well. And then how does she navigate all of that? It was just really enjoyable. It's quite a short read as well. I think it's only 300 or so pages, just over 300. I really enjoyed it. It was such a good read, and just like quite funny at times as well when you hear what she says. That leads me to my last book already. I'm aware I've been waffling, but thank you for staying this far if you have, and it is The Giver by Lois Lowry. This again had been sat on my shelf for a while. I have been trying to make my way through all of my books on here very slowly, and I got these new ones recently. However, I read this, I want to say, no lie, probably over 10 years ago when I was at school. I did this for like a GCSE or something, I'm not too sure, or like one of those exams in whatever year I was in. And this is very short, obsessive book. I don't quite know what genre to put this in, kind of dystopian, sci-fi, borderline, I guess Hunger Games vibes, those kinds. It seems we're in a future world where a perfect world is being created, where everyone sees in black and white, and there's only the selected few who have the gift of colour, and that is Jonas. Unlike his like, I don't know what birthday it is, but they go to like the school and then the announcement, and it seems Jonas, he is selected as the giver. This is a real big gift, and basically he gets to see colours, but he's also allowed to lie. But it's just seeing all the flaws in a perfect world, like it says on the cover, and it's actually quite dark at times. I can't believe I read this as a child, but reading it as an adult, it is very different. And I didn't realise there's actually like a few other books that followed on from this. I'm not sure if I want to read them just yet, just because I love this so much. But also Jonas is living at home with his mother and father and his younger sister, but they also have a baby living with them who his father is looking after. But then what got me, and I was like squirming as I was reading it, is Jonas was watching back some footage with the giver, who is giving him these memories of these twin babies and how there can only be one in the world. I'll leave that thought with you. If you read this book, you will know what I mean, but it just shows you everything and how relatable it is to now, how the world just isn't perfect, but you can also see the damage of not showing the flaws in the world and keeping it from everyone. And it just so happens that Jonas is the one that has to bear up all those flaws. In the end, it gets too much and he takes action. And that, my dear listeners, is my April roundup of books. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope I didn't waffle on too much. If you like this video, please give it a like. Hit subscribe, it would be great to have you here. I look forward to seeing you in my next video. I'm not sure what order these are all going around, but thank you if you made it this far, and I will see you soon.